How do you get the most reliability and range from your wireless microphones? And could your wireless mic be breaking the law? Hi, I'm Seth, and I work with community media centers on information technology, audio video engineering, operations, and outreach. And today, we're going to talk about wireless microphones, legal and illegal frequencies, this idea of frequency coordination, some of the makes and models that are conventional and prosumer, and which one should you choose based on your use case. Plus, a bonus topic about field mixers and on camera audio recording. And let's talk about frequencies first, because that can make or break your production. There's certainly nothing worse than staticky audio. And if you have older wireless mics, you may be using equipment that is now considered illegal because the frequencies have been unlicensed for use for wireless mics and given off to other purposes. So, what are those frequencies and when do they go into effect? Well, a lot of it revolves around the 700 megahertz spectrum, and a lot of this dates back to more than 15 years ago. If you're using wireless mics that range from 698 to 806 megahertz, those were supposed to be ended their use by June of 2010. Now, these encompass a lot of older systems, and now those frequencies are used for public safety as well as cellular service. So, these probably have had to have been around for a while, and they may be found in more of your installed systems like meeting rooms and that sort of thing. More recently, just 6 years ago now, from 663 to 698 and 617 to 652, those frequencies have been given away for cellular service, a lot of it being for 5G, and that covers systems installed in the last, well, 10 to 15 years or so. These are more common and they're still very much widely in use. So, I do recommend you take a look at your wireless receivers or your transmitters to see what frequencies they're using, because you may be operating in these illegal bands, which could be a problem. When you fall into these frequencies that are now considered illegal, you are liable to be fined by the FCC if they chose to crack down and enforce this use in your area. Or perhaps if somebody in the immediate neighborhood complained that their cellular service wasn't running, or if you're using even older equipment that public safety runs on, well, you don't quite want to anger your police or fire department in your municipality, right? So, at worst, you could be liable for a fine from the FCC, and the best case scenario is that you have interference. So if you have microphones that, let's say, are in this 600 megahertz spectrum, the lower 600s that were recently unlicensed and given away to cellular service, you may be hearing crackling and static that wasn't there before. That is the interference that's coming from these newer licensed uses. So if you want to, number one, avoid operating illegally, but number two, want to ensure you have clear, consistent audio, you do want to check and make sure that your mics aren't operating in any of these three frequency bands. Now let's talk about where you can operate, and these are some examples of legal wireless microphone frequencies. And chances are, if you've purchased a wireless mic in the last 5+ years, you're already good and you're already operating in these ranges. So the first are the lower bands, your VHF frequencies from 174 to 216. Now these are being used in a somewhat limited fashion. They're not very common, but they are used for some utility in-house systems because they do tend to avoid a lot of the congested frequencies in the UHF bands. So you may have some kit, some older kit that works in these frequencies on the VHF, but more likely your mics are operating in the 470 to 608 range. This is UHF. It's most common. It's also what over-the-air television operates in today. And that's where you want to be more careful when it comes to choosing your frequencies. Even more cautiously, you want to avoid, particularly here in the New England area, more specifically Massachusetts, where I'm based, the 470 to 476 and 482 to 488 range, which is used for public safety. Now, how can you figure out what's being used? We're going to talk about that so you can plan your frequencies accordingly. Now, will your mics overpower a Boston based TV station like here in Massachusetts if you happen to be on one of those UHF frequencies? Well, no, of course not, but you will get interference. So it's important to know which ones are nice and quiet and ready for your use, and which ones are occupied. Other examples include the 900 megahertz spectrum, 902 to 928. These are digital systems. They are short range, they are line of sight. You may see these in venue meeting rooms like hotels and that sort of thing. And there are a few more if you have the Shure all wireless system, their Microflex system in your municipal meeting room. That's a very common product. These operate on the DECT range, 1920 to 1930, all digital. And we'll talk about digital versus analog in a sec. Also, the 2.4 gigahertz range. This is popular with those Prosumer Rode Go, DJI, Hollyland mics, which are nice and slick and inexpensive for super short range, but they operate on 2.4 gigahertz, which is also the same spectrum that Wi Fi runs on. And it doesn't take much to realize how crowded a Wi Fi spectrum is in your area. So you do want to be cautious and use these sparingly. Bluetooth is also operating in this range. Now, again, mostly prosumer, but there are some of the more intermediate and advanced level products from Shure and Sennheiser that operate in this range. And lastly, less common but less congested and oftentimes more expensive is the 5.8 gigahertz range. But there aren't a lot of microphone choices, although this frequency band is quite quiet overall. So you know what you can use and you know what you can't use. And this idea of planning frequencies in your vicinity, whether you're at a venue or it's in your studio, is the concept of frequency coordination. And a quick aside, when I was a young whippersnapper in college, I was helping to cover an event for my community media center that was in one of the Boston TV stations. And I showed up with a Sennheiser kit and, not really understanding frequencies. Hey, these worked back where we were coming from, so why wouldn't they work here? Let me tell you, it was a very quick way to meet the engineers at that TV station when they came running towards me. Now, they were very gracious and very kind to talk about frequencies and the fact that I couldn't use them and helped me reprogram and to learn about this. So it's a great way to meet some other people in your area if they happen to be using those same microphone frequencies. But this is necessary in your regular environment. And when you're in the field, you need to know what frequencies are free and not free. Now, in the field, it's always a moving target, but in your studio, you may find that you've probably set it and forget it, right? The frequencies that you programmed for your in-studio wireless mics, your wireless labs are fine. Well, if something changes in your environment, there is new cellular activity, or one of the TV stations, like larger broadcast TV stations, makes a change, you should plan to reassess your frequency use at your studio on a recurring basis. Now, I think 6 months and more is appropriate. Maybe do it once a year when you're doing inventory to look up and see what frequencies are free, to make sure that they are nice and quiet and free and clear, just to ensure that when you have a really important interview that you don't lose the audio as a result. And many of these more intermediate to advanced level products, especially from Shure, Sennheiser, and above, have a built-in scan feature, but there are some web-based tools, and let's take a look at those now. The first example is from Shure. Their website, the Wireless Frequency Finder, allows you to put in an address and choose the particular Shure model that you have, and it will give you a sense of what frequencies are free and which ones aren't in your area. So, for example, here on this picture, you can see the different band identifiers that the Shure mics use, and they give you the frequencies that are suggested and free and clear for your particular address. So this will help narrow down the possibilities very quickly. And Sennheiser offers a very slick one, same concept, where you put in the model of product you have as well as your address, and it will tell you again what frequencies are available and which ones aren't. They also go one step farther to show you why they're not available. So, for example, here you see in those lower 400s, or rather those higher 400s, that public safety in the Boston area is using those bands. And then the blue ones indicate, okay, these ones are vacant, these ones are available. And you can see why, as we go down this list here, you can see that, at least in the Boston metro market, different television stations are using these UHF frequency bands, and it's essential to avoid those. Otherwise, you will have interference. Now, do you need to have a Shure or a Sennheiser mic to use these tools? No, you can just choose for the most part, any of the more common models because the same ones you have may operate in the same bands. And you can get a nice, convenient readout of which frequencies are available and not available in your immediate neighborhood. So, which ones are your conventional kit and which ones are your prosumer models? Well, from Shure and Sennheiser, this is the breakdown: the LX series, BLX, SLX, QLX, etc. Their DECT series is the microflex meeting system that you may have in your city or town hall. Sennheiser has the G3 and G4 series, as well as their DECT models. Those are all those UHF and DECT models. The next step up, more advanced products from electrosonics and sound devices. If you'd like to spend a little bit more, you'll see these for some of the major market TV stations because they have some very slick in-field automatic tools for scanning and coordinating with similar products and similar models in the immediate vicinity. So you do get what you pay for there. On the prosumer side, these operate in the 2.4 gig range. Those are your Rode Wireless Go Pro and Me series, your DJI mics, Hollyland Larks, all great inexpensive options, perhaps for student use or for volunteer use. They do operate on that very crowded 2.4 gigahertz band, but so long as you're operating in a very close range, they do get the job done and do accomplish the goal quite nicely. On the professional side, Shure has a GLX series that operates in that 2.4 gigahertz range. And on a side note, let's talk about digital versus analog because when you're in a very crowded environment, digital can be a worthwhile investment because it will use one channel to carry multiple microphone feeds or one frequency to carry multiple microphone channels. So it is more space efficient when it comes to using spectrum, but what you give up, potentially some audio quality. There may be a little bit of digital breakup. You also get some latency as a result. So if this is a live PA announcing venue type of environment, the digital situation may not be quite suitable. Analog will be less latency, but it will consume more channels. So if you're in a crowded area, analog may be a little bit trickier to use than digital. And that is one of the reasons why DECT systems like Microflex are so common in a meeting room environment because you often may have 8, 10, 12, 16 microphones, and you may be in a crowded spectrum environment and you need all of these to work. And lastly, not exactly wireless, but nevertheless an honorable mention if you are using these great and advanced wireless solutions in the field. Let's talk about how you should record these. Now, for a simple in the field ENG style news shoot, it's hard to avoid and hard to argue against using an on-camera XLR to get something simple recorded. The material is there, there's less equipment, it requires less people, the audio is already synced up, doesn't require any time code systems or synchronization, nothing like that. So that is still a very valid solution. But if you're doing more of a planned project, more of a documentary style project, perhaps you may want to consider recording with a field mixer. Now, this will allow you to record multiple microphones. It will record multiple tracks. So you do get that flexibility in the post production process if you want to raise or lower individual microphones if you're recording multiple subjects. Perhaps the most important distinction between on camera recording and these more advanced products like the Mix Pre that you see there are the quality of the preamps. If you're using a nice, high quality, expensive microphone, perhaps a shotgun mic, you do want a nice, quiet preamp that can provide gain without raising the noise floor and getting all that nasty hiss that you then have to try and fix in post production. Taking it one step further, 32-bit float will give you more quality recording, ultimately more forgiveness if your subject is too quiet or even too loud. It avoids clipping. But again, this really comes down to feasibility. Do you have an extra shoulder, literally, to carry this field mixer, or an extra person to carry this field mixer? It is a separate piece of equipment that you need an SD card for. You need to charge the batteries. You need to synchronize the audio with the video, usually through use of some sort of time code. So it's not for everyone. It's not for every use case. But when you're doing something that really matters, where you need more flexibility in post production, where you need more audio quality, I would recommend checking out a field mixer in lieu of an on camera record. And there are great models if you want to spend some money from sound devices. A slightly less expensive option comes from Zoom. So there you have it, a rundown in wireless microphones from which frequencies you can and cannot use, along with ways to expand your investment and get the most reliability and range from your in-field and in-studio wireless solutions. Which wireless products do you use? Do you have a favorite, or have you had ones that have not worked well for you? Which frequencies or tales of success or not so successful events have you had? Please leave a comment below. And if you need help navigating through wireless microphones or information technology, engineering consulting for your media center, my company Metasonde is here for you. There's a link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching.